So in the book, in Chapter 15, it shows you how to write a program in Java and how in C++. It'll introduce a concept, show you how to do it in Java, show you how to do it in C++. Java and C++ are close enough languages, sister languages, that I think it would be difficult to learn them side by side. And so I think it would be like taking a Spanish class from 5:30 to 7:30 and then an Italian class from 7:30 to 9:30. It would be difficult to try to keep the two languages separate. So we're going to focus our attention for the rest of the semester on Python. We're going to learn the language Python, which is not talked about in the textbook. In your Canvas module, I've given you some resources for Python, but what I did want to do is to show you the same program written in all three languages. So we're going to use an IDE called JGrasp, and I have already given you some instructions on how to install JGrasp on your computer. We're going to use JGrasp, and we're going to write a program. First of all, we're going to write it in Java. Then we're going to write the exact same program in C++, and then we're going to write it in Python, and we're going to compare the three programming languages and see which one we like the best. So I'm going to open up JGrasp on this computer, and we're going to start with a Java program. So I'm going to do File, New. JGrasp supports a number of different programming languages. Java is one of them. So I'm going to open up a new program in Java. I'm going to move this window a little bit over. And I'm going to move this Run window down just a little bit so I have enough room to write my Java program. So Java has a couple of containers, just like an HTML program has a couple of containers. In HTML, we have an HTML container, and inside of that, we have a head container and a body container. JGrasp also has a container. I'm going to call it the class container. Now Java is a case-sensitive language, so we're going to type in letter for letter, word for word. The first word is public class, and then I'm going to give my class or my program a name. I'm going to call it my first program. Remember I told you that naming conventions, since it's more than one word long, I'm going to push them all together, and I'm going to use camel case to separate the three words. This is a container, and in Java, the way that I indicate a container is with a curly brace. So I need an opening curly brace. I'm going to tab down just a little bit and give myself a closing curly brace. You can find the curly braces on your keyboard right beside the letter P. Now, because in HTML, the closing tag is very, very easy to associate with the opening tag, but in Java, it's not. So I'm actually going to put a comment on this closing tag, and a comment is 2 forward slashes. Anything that comes after this, the forward slashes are comments in Java, and I'm just going to label it as the ending brace to my class. I'm going to go inside of this class container, and I'm going to create another container. We'll call it main. So this is going to be public, static, void, main. And I'm going to put some parentheses and then an opening curly brace. I'm going to tab just a little bit and put a closing curly brace. And I'm going to say that this is end main. So I'll put a comment on this closing curly brace, or the close of that main container. And then if you don't mind, I'm going to pull the two of them together, kind of like what I did with the closing body tag and the closing HTML tag on our web page. And I'm going to push them down just a little bit to give myself room. Now, there is something that goes inside of these parentheses that come after the word main. Now, Java, again, is a case-sensitive language, so I want a capital string, and then I'm going to use square braces instead of curly braces, and then I'm going to put the word args, A-R-G-S. So I have a capital S on my string, and I have capitals in the name of my class. I'm going to come inside of this, what I'm going to call my main container, and I am going to type the source code in here. Now, I am required by teacher law that the very first program that the programming students are required to write is Hello World. And so what I'm going to do is write a program that will print to the screen the words Hello World. And in Java, I'm going to say system, and the S in system is capitalized, system.out.print, and then I'm going to put the parentheses again and a semicolon. Every executable line of code in Java is ended with a semicolon. So you say to yourself, why isn't public class, my first program, why doesn't it have a semicolon? Because that's the name of a container. Why doesn't public static void main have a semicolon at the end? Because that's the name of a container. It's not an executable line of code. Anything I put inside of these parentheses will print to the screen. So I'm going to print a string literal. I'm going to surround it by double quotes, and I'm going to type in the word hello world. I'll follow it by some exclamation points because this is very, very exciting. Once I have written my program, I'm going to move this line up a little bit because I need to compile it or turn it into a language that the computer can understand. And I'm going to do that by pressing the green plus sign. The first time that I do this, I need to give this program a name, so I could actually just save it now. I'm going to save file, or excuse me, I'm going to click on this file right here. I'm going to click File, Save As. I'm going to find somewhere that I would like to put it. Like you can put it on your jump drive or anywhere you like to. And I want you to notice that in JGrasp, it automatically filled in the place where I would put my name, my first program. I want you to notice that the name of the file is exactly the same as the name of the class, letter for letter, word for word, followed by a .java file name extension. So I'm just going to name it what it wants to be called. The name of the file has to be the same name as the class, letter for letter, word for word, case for case. I'm just going to let it call it that, and then I'm going to press save. If I had just pressed the green plus sign to compile it, the very first time it would have forced me to give it a name. And I want you to notice in the tab right here it says my first program.java. So now I need to compile it, which will convert it into a language that the computer can understand. So what I'm looking for is it to say operation complete, and that means life is good. And then I'm going to press the red running man. That icon is going to run my program, and what I expect to have happen is for it to say hello world. Now this will only compile and run if you have the JGrasp compilers on your machine, and I showed you how to do that in an earlier video. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is write this exact same program. If you don't mind, I'm going to pull these two closing braces up just a little bit so we can see them. And in 5 lines of code, I can print to the screen, hello world in Java. Now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it in C++. So I'm going to do File, New. I'm going to choose C++. Once again, I'm probably going to have to give it a name. I can give it a name now or later. So let's do File, Save As. I'm going to put it in the same place as I put my Java code. And this time I'm just going to give it a name. I'll call it my first program. I'll give it the same name. But the file name extension is going to be .cpp. C++ source codes have a file name of or extension of .cpp. So I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to write the code for a C++ program. So the first thing I'm going to say is pound include less than IOStream. C++ is also a case-sensitive language. So far everything is in lowercase. And then I'm going to say using name space std. That is standard. And then C++ also uses what I call containers. And this is a main container. So I'm going to say int main. I need an opening curly brace to indicate the beginning of the container and a closing curly brace to indicate where my main container ends. And then I'm also going to put a comment, which is also 2 forward slashes in C++. And I'm going to say end main. And now I have a main container. So I'm going to go inside of the container and I'm going to type in the command that will print to the screen, hello world. And that command is cout, which is short for console out. I'm going to put 2 less than symbols, and then I need my string literal, which is hello world. I'll put exclamation points after this because I'm very excited. And once again, I need a semicolon because every executable line of code in a programming language requires a semicolon. And once again, you say, why isn't int main doesn't have a semicolon? That's because that's a container name. If you'll notice, there is a semicolon after using namespace, std. There is no semicolon after the pound include line. That's because it's not an executable line of code. It is a preprocessor directive. All right, so let's run this program. I have the same not the same, but I have 5 lines of code. If I have already saved it, all I have to do is convert it into a language that the machine understands. I'm going to click the double green plus arrows. What I'm looking for is it to say something nice like operation complete. And then once again, I'm going to click the red running man and see if we get the same response, hello world. So I have the same code or the same program written in two different programming languages. In Java, it took 5 lines of code. In C++, it took 5 lines of code. We're going to repeat this exact same process in Python. JGrasp also supports Python files, so I could click on File New Python as one of the options. If you don't see the options, I can select others, and it will show me a full list of all of the programming languages that I can that are supported by JGrasp. But instead of writing my Python code in JGrasp, I'm actually going to use an online website because we're going to finish the rest of the semester in Python. And so I'm just going to go to a website called Code Sculptor. That way you do not have to have JGrasp or Java compilers or C++ compilers on your computer in order to complete the rest of the semester. So I'm going to go to a website, and the website is called Code Sculptor with a K, Code S-K-U-L-P-T-O-R, Code Sculptor. When I first come into Code Sculptor, there is going to be some sample Python in here. So I can see some sample Python in here. If you want to know what the Python does, if I click the run icon, it's going to pop a box on the screen. The box has a black text box and it has a click me button. If I press the click me button, it changes the text that's inside of the black box. So this is a sample run. You can look at it and see what it does. I am going to select all of that and remove it because the whole point of this exercise was to write a Python program that would just print to the screen, hello world. And so in Python, I'm going to use print, and then I'm going to use the same double quotes that I did in Java and C++, and I'm going to say, hello world. I'm going to put some exclamation points because yet again this is still very, very exciting. And then I'm just going to press the run button. I don't have to compile it because Code Sculptor is an interpreter and it will interpret it on the fly. When I press the run button, if you'll notice the run is on the right hand side of the screen when the source code is on the left hand side of the screen. So let me refresh my memory. How many lines of code did it take to do it in Java? It took 5 lines of code. How many lines of code did it take in C++? It also took 5 lines of code if you count the closing curly braces as lines of code. And in Python, it took 1 single line of code. This is the reason why we're going to focus our attention on Python throughout the rest of the class.